Welcome to Grameen Foundation's podcast series, Women in Agriculture. We discuss ways in which we can transform systems, mindsets, perspectives, behaviors, and actions so that rural based women farmers and women entrepreneurs can show up with their full power. I'm your host, Lakshmi. Welcome to Women in Agriculture podcast episode 6. It is hard to imagine that we are in our 6th episode for this particular series, introducing the work that Grameen Foundation has been undertaking to increase gender inclusion with various market actors, including farmer producer organizations in India. But on today's podcast, we're going to be flying all the way from Uttar Pradesh, India to Davao, Philippines, where we'll be speaking with my Philippines-based colleague, Genevieve Cabiza, or BEM for short, who is a gender expert in her own right with a resilience and gender inclusion project taking place with Cacao Cooperatives. Welcome, Bem. So happy to have you on this podcast to discuss the incredible work you and your team have been undertaking over the past year. It would be great, Bem, to learn from you about the project and everything that we aim to achieve and how we went about achieving everything. But first, let's take a step back perhaps and set the stage for our audience and for our discussion around the gender inclusion landscape in the Philippines and especially in Davao. Because as we have been discussing internally, it really differs from the context of Uttar Pradesh, India. And that's where we've been really honing in our discussion for the last 5 episodes of this podcast. So please tell us, what does this context look like in Davao, this gender inclusion context?
Hi, Lakshmi, and hello to your listeners for this podcast. So, in Southeast Asia, the Philippines is thought of as the gender equality leader. There are significant progress has been made in general in gender equality in the Philippines. And there are efforts to further enhance women's economic empowerment, political representation, and protection from gender-based violence. Um, in the agriculture setting, in particular in cacao farming or in cacao sector, women in cacao farming, they wear many hats. They are farmers, they are laborers, and they are caregivers. However, their contributions often go unnoticed. Women work longer hours, yet have less access to land, credit, inputs, and training. This is despite the Philippines' commitment to gender equality through the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women and other various pro-women policies. However, these policies or the implementation of these policies remains weak, especially in the agriculture, as farming is still male dominated. Although women have access to land, to loans, and farm resources, but in a lesser quantity than men. And then wage gap still persists as women are often delegated to lower paying farm tasks, while also they are expected to manage household responsibilities and childwork. Though women play a crucial role in agriculture and food security, targeted support for them remains limited, especially in agriculture sector. Hence, achieving true gender equality in the Philippine agriculture is still a long road ahead.
Bem, it's really interesting how the context differs from what we've been discussing over the past 5 episodes in based in Uttar Pradesh. It sounds like these women in the Philippines, these cacao farmers have access to various resources. They can leave their homes and they're really embedded in the ecosystem, and people do recognize that and respect that. but perhaps it's just at a lower level than their male counterparts. Am I hitting on it right? Is that right?
Yes, this is right. In the project that we worked with, we are working with 15 cacao cooperatives. And among these 15 cooperatives, some board members are women, and a lot of members of these cooperatives are also women. However, a lot of the top leadership positions are still with men, unfortunately.
It sounds to me, Ben, based on what you said, that it's really the leadership that needs to shift and change, and that it's their perceptions that with this project, you were probably honing a lot of energy and effort into. Do you mind talking a little bit about the project and introducing the project?
Yeah, sure. So Grameen Foundation currently serves as the business service provider and gender equality and social inclusion and human rights, or GESIHR, partner for the Mennonite Economic Development Associates, or MEDA, under their Resilience and Inclusion through Investment for Sustainable Agricultura, or RISA initiative. So this project, or this initiative, is funded by the Government of Canada, and RISA is a 5-year project which was launched in 2021 to strengthen the cacao sector and create sustainable livelihoods in Davao region in Mindanao, Philippines. We work with 15 cooperatives in the Davao region to improve their investment readiness while promoting gender equality and social inclusion. So, through assessments, through workshops, and community dialogues, the project aims to tackle challenges and build a more resilient cacao sector.
Super. This project sounds so interesting, fascinating. So, how inclusive are these cooperatives, would you say, when it comes to gender equality and social inclusion?
Yes, so some cooperative leaders have attended past seminars and trainings on gender and development. However, they haven't had many opportunities to put what they learned into practice. And then, as mentioned earlier, a large percentage of the co-op members are women, but in terms of leadership and decision making, some cooperative still prefer men as leaders.
So, if I understand it correctly, Bem, it sounds like they had the language, like these cooperative leaders had gender and social inclusion language, like they had that vocabulary, but really didn't have the action planning process or perhaps have a way to translate into action. Is that right? What are some of the specific activities you undertook to kind of get them into the action planning mode?
So, Grameen, guided by NIDA's Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Market Systems Framework, we've conducted a gender and power dynamics workshops and community dialogues with cooperative and community members to raise awareness on gender equality and social inclusion, and to challenge harmful gender norms, not just in the farming business, but also in the household level. Cooperatives then co-develop an action plan to improve their gendered environment, social governance, integrating gender and social inclusion into their business strategies or into their business plans, policies, etc. So to strengthen these efforts, the Nida Risa project trained gender equality champions, or what we call the GECs in short, for each cooperative, engaging both cooperative gender focal points and some influential community leaders. So, through a training of trainers program, we selected GECs meeting NIDA's gender responsive criteria were equipped or were trained to advocate for women's participation and the equitable treatment of the marginalized groups. So they are expected, our gender equality champions or GECs, that they continue integrating gender equality, social inclusion, and human rights into their cooperative operations and community initiatives beyond project timelines. And as of today, a total of there's a 30 gender equality champions and 171 community gender champions who were trained. And then there's a 1,244 individuals who were able to participate in our community dialogues for gender equality and social inclusion. We aim to target for equal participation among men and women. So in our activities, like for example, in our gender equality champions training, we aim for the participants or the GECs will be 50% male and 50% female.
Wow, Bem, it sounds like that's a lot of activities to undertake in a small amount of time and really aim to delve deep into action planning. So, if I just summarize it, there's gender and power dynamics workshop, and then you integrated those workshops with the board members and the leadership members of the cooperatives with community dialogues, and then targeted specific members of the community to be gender equality champions, and support the cooperatives in their journey, I suppose, to be more gender inclusive and socially inclusive. This is super. These activities sound really interesting and they correlate with each other. And the most pressing thing now, I suppose, is that these cooperatives continue to embed Jesse HR activities in their planning processes after Grameen exits the project sites. What do we have in place to kind of support them to do that?
Yes, we have for the gender equality, social inclusion, learning sessions, and community dialogues. These gave the gender equality champions and their cooperatives a platform to share knowledge, to refine teaching skills of the GECs, and foster discussions on gender equality within their cooperatives and communities. These learning sessions we're able to encourage members to reflect on their attitudes and to challenge societal norms that perpetuate gender equality. Some cooperatives began integrating these learning sessions on gender equality and social inclusion into their education programs, which ensures an ongoing awareness and engagement within the cooperative and their members. Other cooperatives included gender equality topics into their pre-membership seminars with plans to expand these discussions. And then our gender equality champions, they also invited local government and tribal leaders to participate in the community dialogues and the learning session, hence strengthening the community involvement and support for gender and social inclusion initiatives. It is also noteworthy to point out that these gender champions hold influence within their cooperatives and communities. Some of them are board of director members, managers, and local community leaders who have strong voice and support in advocating for gender equality and social inclusion. Moreover, these gender champions are also now part of the gender and development committees or their focal point systems, which can actively contribute to cooperatives, gender and development plans, budgets, and policies.
So, Bem, what do you hope to see these cooperatives do moving forward now that this project is coming to a close? What are your hopes for them?
So moving forward, I hope these cooperatives continue integrating gender equality and social inclusion into their everyday operations. not just as a project requirement, but as a core value. Um, and then institutionalizing the gender equality champions learning sessions within their education programs and governance structures would also ensure that awareness and advocacy efforts remain sustainable. It would also be great to see these cooperatives actively apply gender equality, social inclusion, and human rights principles in decision making, leadership, and resource allocation, which can create more inclusive opportunities for women and the marginalized members. Hopefully, these cooperative can strengthen partnerships with their local government units, with their tribal leaders, and other stakeholders that could help them expand support networks and access to resources, especially for the marginalized groups. Then ultimately, the goal is for these cooperatives to become models of gender responsive and socially inclusive businesses proving that equitable participation leads to stronger, more resilient organizations and communities.
Thank you so much, Bem. Sounds like these co-ops are really equipped now, not only with the vocabulary that they had before, but really kind of this action planning process and these gender equality champions that are within the communities who will continue advocating for Jesse HR. I wish them all the best. I wish you all the best, Bem. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast episode and sharing your experiences with us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Talk to you later.